Imagine standing in a crowded marketplace where voices shout from every direction, colors flash, and the noise grows so loud that you can barely hear your own thoughts. That marketplace is what modern life feels like for so many of us. Endless distractions, demands, and noise pulling us in every direction. And yet in the middle of all this, there is a quieter path, a way that does not scream but whispers, a way called simplicity. Simplicity is not about poverty or denial, but about freedom. It is the art of knowing what to leave behind so that what truly matters can shine more brightly. When life is simplified, the unnecessary cluttered, whether material, emotional, or mental, no longer controls us. What remains is clarity, and in clarity there is strength. Think of a stream running through the forest. When it is filled with mud, stones, and debris, its waters become cloudy and slow. But when it is cleared, it flows with force and direction. So it is with our lives. Simplicity clears away the debris of chaos so that the current of purpose can run strong. A wise voice once said, "The ability to simplify means to eliminate the unnecessary so that the necessary may speak." How often do we silence the necessary, love, kindness, rest, reflection, because we are too preoccupied with the unnecessary? We rush, we acquire, we compare, and in the end, we wonder why we feel so empty. Simplicity invites us to breathe, to sit with a friend without a phone buzzing, to read a book without glancing at the clock, to pray, reflect, or simply be without the weight of 1,000 expectations pressing down. It is not weakness but strength to live in such a way, because it means we are no longer enslaved by the voices of chaos. Consider a story. A traveler once entered a monk's small room and was astonished to see almost nothing inside. "Where is your furniture?" the traveler asked. The monk smiled and replied, "Where is yours?" The traveler laughed and said, "I am only passing through." The monk nodded, "So am I." That is the wisdom of simplicity. It reminds us that we are passing through, and we do not need to carry the whole world on our backs. When we embrace simplicity, relationships deepen. Instead of being built on competition or status, they grow from presence and authenticity. Instead of always running after more, we start cherishing enough. And when enough becomes enough, peace replaces striving. Simplicity is not the absence of richness, it is the discovery of true richness. It is the strength of saying no when the world demands yes. It is the courage to choose rest over rush, depth over surface, meaning over noise. And in that choice, we find a life free from chaos, anchored in peace. There is a hidden strength woven quietly into the fabric of simplicity. It is not the kind of strength that shouts for attention or dominates with force, but the kind that gently unshackles the chains we did not even realize we were carrying. Simplicity liberates. It loosens the tight grip of possessions, appearances, and unnecessary complications that often govern our days. And in that release, it grants us a freedom so profound, so deeply refreshing, that we wonder how we ever lived without it. For many, life has become an endless pursuit of accumulation. We gather possessions as though they were trophies of meaning, stacking them high, yet finding our hearts strangely empty. We shape our appearances, polishing them until they gleam in public view, yet we know the hollowness that hides beneath. We construct complex webs of schedules, tasks, and ambitions, thinking that the more we weave, the more significant our lives will be. And then in a quiet moment, we discover we are suffocating. It is in that realization that simplicity speaks, offering freedom from the very burdens we ourselves have crafted. There is an old story of a fisherman sitting quietly by the shore, repairing his nets after a long morning's work. A wealthy businessman approached and asked why he was resting instead of fishing more. The fisherman replied, "I have already caught enough for today." The businessman scoffed, "But if you fished longer, you could earn more money, buy a bigger boat, catch more fish, and eventually retire to enjoy life." The fisherman smiled and said, "And what do you think I am doing now?" That story unveils a truth. We often enslave ourselves with the belief that more effort, more possession, and more striving will give us what is already within reach through simplicity. Simplicity liberates because it calls us back to sufficiency. It whispers that enough truly is enough. This does not mean neglect or irresponsibility. It does not mean rejecting the blessings of good work or the joy of meaningful possessions. It means holding these things with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. When we cling too tightly, we lose sight of the giver and become captives of the gift. But when we release, when we allow simplicity to reorder our loves, suddenly we find space for joy that is unshaken by loss and contentment that is not dependent on increase. Think of the weight we carry when appearances dominate our lives, the need to be seen, admired, envied, the endless comparison that gnaws away at peace. One person said, "We spend money we do not have to buy things we do not need to impress people we do not like." And how true that often is. Simplicity cuts the cords of this exhausting performance. It frees us to live authentically, without the constant burden of comparison. When we walk in simplicity, we no longer need the applause of the crowd because we have discovered the still, quiet assurance of being enough as we are. It is in this liberation that we also discover a deeper clarity. Once the clutter begins to fall away, the vision clears. Have you ever entered a room so filled with objects that you could hardly move? The air feels heavy, the space overwhelming. But then the room is cleared, light enters, and suddenly you see not only the space, but also the beauty of its simplicity. The same is true of the heart and mind. When burdened with endless desires, endless worries, endless noise, we cannot see clearly. But in simplicity, clarity emerges like a sunrise breaking through the fog. Clarity allows us to distinguish between what is urgent and what is important, between what glitters and what truly shines. A cluttered life blurs these distinctions, leaving us rushing after shadows. But a life shaped by simplicity unveils the contours of truth. We see where our energy belongs, where our affections should rest, where our time carries weight. In this clarity, peace enters, because chaos no longer has a home. Consider a glass of water into which a spoonful of soil has been stirred. The water becomes muddy and unclear. That is the state of a mind overwhelmed by noise and chaos. Now imagine setting the glass down, letting it rest. Slowly, the soil settles to the bottom and the water clears. Nothing magical occurred, only stillness. Simplicity offers that stillness to the soul. It allows the sediment of distraction to settle so that clarity may return. Clarity is not simply the absence of confusion, but the presence of purpose. It is the ability to hear the voice of truth amidst the clamor of competing sounds. It is the power to see through the illusions of more, faster, and louder, and instead recognize the steady rhythm of what matters most. When simplicity has cleared away the fog, we see relationships more clearly. We see our work more clearly. We see ourselves more clearly. And above all, we see life itself as a gift, not a burden. There is a saying, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. How often do we lose sight of the main thing because we are chasing 100 other things? Simplicity removes the excess, and clarity lifts our gaze. Suddenly, what truly matters stands before us, and what once demanded our anxious energy fades into its proper place. Clarity also grants us the courage to slow down. In a world that equates speed with significance, slowing down feels almost rebellious. But when clarity comes, we realize that speed without direction is emptiness in motion. It is not how fast we run that gives meaning, but where we are going and why. Simplicity creates the conditions for clarity, and clarity reveals that the hurried life is not necessarily the meaningful life. There was once a traveler who rushed through a beautiful garden, eager to reach the other side. He glanced quickly at the flowers, the trees, the fountains, but his mind was fixed on the exit. Another traveler entered, walking slowly, pausing to breathe in the fragrance of a rose, to listen to the birds, to feel the coolness of the shade. At the end, the first traveler could say only that he had crossed a garden, while the second could say that the garden had crossed him. Clarity teaches us to live like the second traveler, fully present, fully alive, no longer enslaved by the illusion of hurry. When simplicity liberates us from the weight of possessions and appearances, clarity fills that freed space. We begin to see that the strength of life does not rest in what we gather, but in what we release. We begin to see that purpose is not hidden in chaos, but revealed in calm. We begin to see that peace is not earned through striving, but received through simplicity. This is the hidden strength of simplicity. It frees us and clears us. It frees us from the chains of unnecessary burdens, and it clears our vision to walk with purpose and peace. In that freedom, in that clarity, we step out of chaos and into a way of living that is not fragile but enduring, not shallow but deep, not enslaved but free. There is a paradox in life that many overlook. The more we chase after abundance, the emptier we often feel. We accumulate, we strive, we compete, and yet, once we grasp what we thought would satisfy, we find it slipping like sand through our fingers. This is because abundance in itself is not wealth. True wealth is discovered not in the endless pursuit of more, but in the quiet recognition of contentment with what already rests in our hands. Simplicity teaches us this lesson with clarity and grace. It shifts our gaze from the horizon of what is yet to come to the gift of what already is. One wise person once said, "Contentment is not the fulfillment of what you want, but the realization of how much you already have." In those words is the heart of true wealth. It is not measured in bank accounts or possessions, but in the depth of gratitude and the richness of inner peace. There is a story of a king who owned vast treasures, yet could not sleep at night. His mind was restless with worry about losing what he had. In his frustration, he summoned a wise servant and asked for the secret to contentment. The servant told him to visit a farmer in a nearby village who was known for his joy. Curious, the king disguised himself and traveled to the farmer's small cottage. He found the man eating a simple meal with his family, laughter echoing through the room. "What gives you such joy with so little?" the king asked. The farmer replied, "Because my heart is full. I count what I have, not what I lack." The king returned with a deeper treasure than gold, the discovery that contentment is wealth no thief can steal. In our modern rush, we often equate success with accumulation, bigger homes, newer devices, fuller closets. Yet in the pursuit of these, how many have lost time with their families, lost the wonder of stillness, lost the simple joy of being alive? Simplicity reorients our hearts away from this endless grasping. It tells us that wealth lies in relationships, in purpose, in peace, not in things that perish or fade. True wealth is a home filled with laughter, not with clutter. It is the ability to sit quietly at the end of the day and feel a sense of gratitude rather than anxiety. It is knowing that joy is not found in the excess of possessions, but in the abundance of meaning. The ancient wisdom holds true. Better a meal of vegetables where there is love than a fattened ox where there is hatred. Simplicity uncovers that kind of wealth where love, peace, and contentment form the riches of the soul. But discovering this wealth requires courage, for the voices around us insist that worth is found in what we achieve and what we own. To choose simplicity is to resist those voices, to say no to the lie that more equals better. And in saying no, we open space for a deeper yes, the yes to joy, to peace, to gratitude. When we shift from chasing abundance to receiving contentment, we stand in the stream of life's true riches. This movement toward contentment also has a remarkable effect. Chaos begins to lose its grip. Chaos thrives where desires are endless, where schedules are overloaded, where hearts are restless. It thrives in the noise of never enough and always more. But when we simplify, when we embrace the freedom of contentment, the very ground on which chaos stands begins to crumble. Imagine a storm swirling with fierce winds, uprooting everything in its path. That storm is chaos, pulling at our attention, scattering our peace, disrupting our relationships. Simplicity does not stop storms from arising, but it roots us deeply so that we do not get swept away. Like a tree planted by still waters, simplicity anchors us, and in that rootedness, chaos loses its grip. Consider the story of a woman who felt her life unraveling under the weight of endless demands. Her home was filled with clutter, her calendar packed with commitments, her mind constantly racing. She felt she could not breathe. One day, she decided to begin small, clearing a single drawer, saying no to one unnecessary obligation, setting aside a few minutes each morning for quiet reflection. At first, these seemed insignificant, but slowly the storm began to calm. The drawer became a room, the room became her home, the moments of quiet became an anchor for her soul. Through simplicity, she reclaimed her life from chaos, not in one sweeping change, but in 1,000 small choices to let go. Chaos often disguises itself as urgency. Everything feels pressing, every demand shouts for attention, and we live as though we must respond instantly or risk failure. But when simplicity takes root, we begin to see the truth: not everything urgent is important, and not everything important is urgent. Clarity emerges, priorities align, and the storm weakens. In simplicity, we learn to choose presence over distraction, depth over hurry, and meaning over noise. Relationships especially flourish when chaos loosens its grip. How many families live together but never truly connect because schedules pull them apart? How many friendships wither because they are crowded out by business? When we simplify, we create space for presence. We rediscover the joy of unhurried conversation, the gift of shared silence, the strength of being fully available to one another. Simplicity restores what chaos has stolen. And beyond relationships, simplicity reclaims the spiritual journey. Chaos thrives on noise, but the soul needs silence. Chaos thrives on hurry, but the soul needs stillness. Chaos thrives on distraction, but the soul needs focus. When simplicity enters, it creates the environment where the deeper life can flourish. It is no accident that throughout history, those who sought depth often chose simplicity. They understood that to hear the quiet voice of truth, the clamor of chaos must be hushed. The grip of chaos is not easily broken, but it is steadily weakened when we embrace simplicity. Each act of release, releasing possessions, releasing appearances, releasing needless complications, is a blow against its power. Each choice of contentment over craving is a step into freedom. And in that freedom, chaos no longer rules the heart. So we see the hidden strength of simplicity in two great movements. First, it reveals to us the treasure of true wealth, not in the abundance of things, but in the richness of contentment. Second, it loosens the grip of chaos, giving us back our lives, our relationships, and our spiritual depth. These are not small gains. They are the very substance of life lived well. The invitation is simple, but profound, to shift from chasing what cannot satisfy to receiving what already fills the soul, and to step out of the grip of chaos into the steady rhythm of peace. In that place, we discover that simplicity is not weakness, not deprivation, but strength. The kind of strength that frees, that grounds, that restores. The kind of strength that whispers quietly but changes everything. So let us dare to simplify, not by stripping life of beauty, but by stripping life of what keeps us from seeing beauty. In doing so, we uncover the hidden strength of simplicity, a strength that steadies us, frees us, and leads us to live not in chaos, but in freedom.